second. I'm gonna just put the recording, and she's going to like let us know about different topics related to marketing, but also about how to change the mindset of customers to shift to online experiences, and also how even in hard times you can balance this support to environmental sustainability, but also to support the people you work with, the company as a whole. And you're here to like ask anything you want. So first we'll have a conversation between us, and then the floor is all yours to ask any questions. So I'm happy to see you all. I see that we are having a lot of product companies, which is also good, even though we are going to talk about a tourism business. Many of the things can apply to any kind of business. So I'm sure you will gain very valuable insights from this conversation. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's lovely to be here and to chat to you all today from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Nice. Okay, so first, before asking you a few questions, I wanted to explore a bit more who is And Beyond, what does And Beyond do, why is it so different to other business companies? So what makes it special?
Well, thanks for that. And Beyond was started, like you said, in 1991 in South Africa, and it was started with the formation of a private reserve, which was made up of 4 sort of old farmlands that I think they were pineapple farms and cattle farms that weren't thriving. And our founders had the vision that tourism done correctly could leave our world a better place. And so what they set up there is the vision to turn that derelict farmland into a private game reserve and rewild it. It was in 1991, Nelson Mandela had just been released from prison, and our elections, our first democratic elections, happened in 1994, and there was quite a lot of civil unrest in the country at that time. Yet they managed, with their vision, to convince quite a few investors to give them a substantial amount of money to start this dream. And the dream wasn't just about the land and the wildlife, but it was around recruiting the communities that lived surrounding that land to ensure that the economic benefits from the wildlife on that land, that they shared in those benefits. And so our impact model of care of the land, care of the wildlife, and care of the people was born in 1991. It was always, the vision was that would be funded by the profits made from the delivery of extraordinary guest experiences. So now today we have 29 lodges, 28 of them are on the continent of Africa, 1 in Chile, and we are about to open in, well, COVID has delayed it a couple of times. It was already supposed to be open, but February 2023 is the opening date for our first lodge in Bhutan in Asia. And so we are, we're in 4 countries in South America. We're in 6 countries in Africa with our own lodges. And then we tour operate in 4 countries in Asia as well: India, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Nepal. And so we've got quite a varied footprint, a lot of children to look after as a marketing director, very many products in the mix there, but all born out of the intent that travel can be a force for good. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about who we are.
That's great. No, I'm also impressed by the fact that you're opening lodges in Bhutan, for example, which is such a it's not a very popular tourism place because it's not that accessible. So that I'm sure you're finding like a great balance, to like not being very disruptive in the place, but at the same time foster this tourism. So I'm really curious about that.
Well, our whole model is really around high cost, low volume tourism model, which puts us at the luxury end in terms of price. And so we really do have to exceed, we have to go beyond expectations for many of our guests in order for the model to work. Just to give you an understanding, we have just short of 30,000 hectares now on Phinda Private Game Reserve. That was the reserve that was started in 1991. But there's 6 lodges on that 30,000 hectares, and they range in size from 4 rooms to 6 rooms. And then the largest is only 25 rooms. So they're very, very small properties with a lot of space around them. So you don't feel overcrowded, or it's a real low volume model. So Bhutan in some ways is quite similar to that, in that we're used to dealing with small numbers.
Amazing. So what was the first product that the company was working on?
Our founders actually had a very well-known safari camp just outside the Kruger National Park in South Africa called Londolozi. That lodge was in our portfolio up until 2004, but that was started by them in the 70s. So that was quite a while back. But our first proper project was Phinda Private Game Reserve in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal was where we started. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And not going back so much, but going back only to March 2020. So how did COVID first impacted your business?
Yeah, it was, if I think back, it was absolutely crazy, because I can remember being in meetings from the January when we were getting the news from Asia that it was there, and then it was all, this is just a flu, and it's, it will go away, and it's going to be another, bird flu or whatever it was, and we'll be fine. So I can remember sitting in a meeting on the 15th of March when we started seeing the cancellations just fly in. And then South Africa locked down on around the 22nd of March. And then we had, and so did Kenya, and so did Tanzania, and all the countries started, closing their borders. And we basically had 3 or 4 days to get about 4,000 guests back home. And I can remember the craziness of that. But at the same time, looking at all the cancellations that had to be processed for April bookings, for the May bookings, and we just looked at those chunks first. We started as a marketing team feeling like this must be so terrible for guests that have planned for so long, because sometimes to come to some of our destinations are not on the beaten track. They all take a little bit of effort to get to. They all perhaps need a little bit of hand holding, because you can't always connect the dots yourselves. You can't drink the water. People are a little bit nervous to go there. So it's a big decision to make, to come to Africa, or to go to India, or to go to the bottom end of Chile. And you look forward to it, and you've done all of this planning. Some trips could be planned 12 to 18 months in advance. And then it gets to so close and your dream is gone. And so we sat as a marketing team and we thought, well, how can we care? What could we do to care or acknowledge some of the loss that a lot of our guests were feeling at that time? And so we came up with a campaign to bring and beyond home. And so we said, if we can't get them to us, let's see if we can take us to them in some way. And so that's sort of where some of the innovation that happened during COVID started, is that we started asking those questions. But it was a crazy intense time, not one I'd like to go through again. And it's been an interesting 18 months.
Yeah, I was asking this because your services, your type of business has been traditionally the most unlikely to survive in this kind of crisis. And in the pandemic, we've seen that many people, obviously, they stopped traveling. So it's amazing how you managed to change this mindset of your customers to purchase this new experience with safaris, but also for you to adapt, because you're also selling a service that you had not done before. And also, how was it internally changing this for as a team, to like now get used to doing a different kind of work, because you have existed for more than 40 years, and yeah, I guess you're used to doing some stuff.
Let me go back just a few steps. So we started this campaign of bringing and beyond to people. We started first with we collected videos and movies they could watch, documentaries they could watch, books they could read, music they could listen to, recipes that they could cook. So we started off with stuff that we could send to them that way. But at the same time, we had the opportunity, and it was a decision I can remember making overnight. We had to act quickly, like at the beginning of, when our president in South Africa said that we had 4 days to get people like locked down. I had a conversation with a live broadcaster called Wild Earth, who had been streaming safaris from 1 or 2 locations in Africa, but had scaled down their operations quite a bit. And I said to them, we discussed, I said, could you get a cameraman to one of our reserves before we all couldn't move around anymore? And we took a little bit of a chance and said, okay, let's try and let's get them there. We're only committed for the month of April. And so what ended up happening is that we then started streaming live safaris twice a day off their platform from one of our lodges with one of our guides that were left there because they couldn't, we needed some staff to stay behind to just look after the camp and to patrol the game reserve, because we knew poaching would be quite a big thing with that COVID might impact people's ability to get food, and then poaching would come into the mix. And so we had left some guides there. So we started with these live safaris, and then we started getting these requests from guests and audiences around the world saying, I'd like to do this by myself so that I could ask the guide a question, because the live safaris were run on YouTube, and you could put a question in the YouTube chat, but there were thousands of questions. And then the directors who chose which sightings got put on screen would choose which questions to feed through to the guides that were live, and then they would answer the question live. But obviously, the more people watching it, the less chance that your question could get answered. And so people started getting frustrated. And so they started asking us, could we do a private version of this? And so we were like, oh, that's interesting. We hadn't thought about that. And so then I had a discussion with our guides. And then I did think they thought I was really going crazy, because there's a couple of things here that I guess I want to point out. Number one, I would never have thought about live streaming from our reserves before this. The reason I was able to contact Wild Earth so quickly was because we had a discussion a few months before where I said, okay, I'll think about it. I wasn't sure about the value of live streaming and what it could do for the brand. So I had question marks on it, because if you've ever been on a safari game drive before, there's nothing that can really beat the real thing. The smells, the sounds, the wind in your hair, it's an open air vehicle. The world feels so far away. And I wasn't sure about whether you could achieve anything close to what you could, on a virtual live stream. So I was skeptical to start off with, and now I was asking my guides to now perhaps guide on a Zoom session a recorded live safari, so that guests could interact directly with the guide and be able to have a personalized experience. So we chose, like our safari vehicles only allow 6 guests on a vehicle. They're small vehicles. They're not like a huge truck. There's only 6 guests, maximum of 6. We decided that we would set up these private virtual experiences it was called My Wild Watch Online, for just 6 links. So you couldn't have a whole stream of people, so that the guide could interact directly with each person on the link. So I approached our guide trainers. We run 2 guide schools in and beyond, and they've also all been with us a long time, and they're very set in their ways. But COVID opened everybody's eyes to some possibility. And what they did know was that they had a lot of their guiding team that had been sent home. If they had technology or access to Wi-Fi and a computer, this is something that they could do. So we set up a internal training for how to do a private safari, and the guide trainers did the first ones for us. And we all, I mean, if I think back to it, we all spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time curating the content that they would guide. We indexed all the safaris, so we knew which safari had which animals in. So if a guest said they were really interested in elephant or they were really interested in lion, the guides could choose a drive that had the animals that they were interested in. And so we did all of this work with them. It's almost like if you had to get me, who's very comfortable with a computer and Zoom, to drive a 4x4 game drive vehicle, I would be a little bit out of my comfort zone. Well, for them, getting them out the vehicle and getting them to drive a computer and video was also quite a challenge. So there was a lot of technological training or literacy that we had to sort of invest in to get it up and running. And then we said, let's try. And what we did is we said, we set a price for it. And then we said 10% will go to Africa Foundation, who's our social community development partner. The guides would get a gratuity out of each drive that they guided. And the rest of the proceeds would go to our conservation projects that were ongoing during COVID. So it was a real way of, again, using our guest experience to fund our care of land, care of wildlife, and care of people. And so we said, it might not work, but we're all sitting around and there's nothing else to do. So we might.
True.
And so we did, and we launched it at the end of May 2020. We had quite a few hits from a media perspective. And then we had a Wall Street Journal correspondent purchase and participate in one of our virtual experiences. And then she wrote about it. And then the volume just came in. That one piece. Nice. Yeah, then the demand just skyrocketed. We just saw it go crazy. And yeah, it was interesting to see, even for myself, both from the live streams that still happen twice a day to the virtual safaris, how the content was able to achieve some of what happens when you're on the vehicle. Because when you're on a game drive vehicle for the first time, seeing animals that you've never seen before, you've got a lot of curiosity. And then to have a really, really expert guide who can interpret what you're seeing and add meaning to it, make it come alive, make you understand it, make you understand why it's important, why the land that these animals are on is important, why we need to look after it and preserve it and care for it. You end up leaving, you have a guest who came with like a tick list of animals to say, I want to see a lion and a rhino and an elephant, etc., etc. But they leave as almost planet ambassadors. And so that shift that happens on a game drive vehicle, I wasn't sure could happen virtually. And that's where I was wrong. Yeah, because we had some amazing stories come back to us and some incredible donations to some of the projects that we kept running during this time. Yeah, sorry, I probably
no, it's amazing. I want to still like keep listening to this, so I want to learn more about those stories, but I'm just impressed by the fact that you manage perfectly to understand the consumer, but also to understand the rangers, the staff you are working with in the field, to adapt the businesses for them as well. Because of course, it's totally different to like drive a car, they're in a safari and be able to like show, to like record this safari. So like in terms, if I can ask, in terms of like equipment, how was it? Because if I were a customer in this virtual safari, I would be a bit worried maybe about the quality of the images, and how to really see how was the feedback with this
Yeah,
regard?
so again, it's interesting because we looked at what we had in our hand. So we didn't do the recording ourselves. We were able, because of our participation with Wild Earth, they recorded all the safaris every day. So we were able to use their safaris to guide off that. So the quality of the recording was good because we collaborated with somebody who knew what they were doing and had the equipment. We didn't need to work that part was there. But then we had to test Wi-Fi speeds because the upload and download speed, and a lot of our guides could only do this actually because what we did realize is a lot of them did not have their own technology and they did not have access to Wi-Fi outside of our properties. And so they could only do it while they were at our lodges. So then we had to look at, okay, where do they sit? What's the background? Because people want to see where they are. What's the Wi-Fi speed, and if they could get a second screen, that would help because you can optimize the video a lot better if there's a second screen. How do you optimize the sound? What's the best way to stop and start? Some guides started editing their own videos so that they didn't have to forward and stop. So some of them learned video editing, which was interesting. We had some guides that incorporated the lodge experience into the virtual experience. So we had one guest who was meant to celebrate her 50th birthday at one of our camps on safari, and then obviously couldn't come. So then she decided to do a virtual safari with friends around the world. So she'd have, like, for us in South Africa, it was like one at 5 o'clock in the morning, one at 12, one at 4, and one at 9 at night. So she had like 4 in the day where she connected with different friends from around the world. And on the one, the guide had organized for the chef. We always bake cakes at our lodges. If it's your birthday, you will always get a cake. And so he had arranged for the kitchen to bake her a cake with candles. And then he pretended to go outside to show her the Masai Mara and the view. And out there was all of our staff. And they loved to make music with like pots and spoons, and they use a whole lot of different equipment to turn them into musical instruments, and they sang happy birthday to her outside. And so
nice.
To bring sort of like that depth of guest experience and surprise into the virtual experience as well. So some of them got very creative in terms of the skills that they had.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think people also became more flexible because they couldn't, like, as a customer, you couldn't do anything else. So you were like, why not, right? Why not doing this?
I would say in the beginning, we did struggle with the quality of the video when it came over Zoom. It took us a while. And I think for me, the lesson learned there was, well, firstly, we stopped and asked sort of that question, like from our guest perspective. Then we said, what do we have in our hand? And we had these guides sitting there with extra capacity, and we had some of our sort of our reservations team and our support teams that were also going to have to be put on furlough because there wasn't anything for them to do. So we had extra capacity there. And then we said, okay, well, let's just let go of perfect, because we know it can't be perfect, but we need to try. I think if we had waited for everything to be perfect, we would never have taken the first step.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting learning, is that even though we always asked for feedback after each virtual experience, how could we improve it? So we got that feedback back, and the guides would also check in all the time. Can you see, is the video okay? And then we had, the excuse of that we were streaming to them from the middle of nowhere most of the time. But we kept on trying to tweak and improve it so that the quality got better. We didn't wait to go, because it was quite funny when we decided to launch it in May. I was like, by July, the world will be back to normal. Nobody will want this. We've got this tiny window to do this in, and then it will be over. I mean, we've still been running virtual experiences. We've just actually paused them now because our guests are back, so our guides are busy, and so we're battling to juggle virtual guests with real guests. So it's been what's that, 15 months that we ended up doing it for. It was a lot longer than what I thought. So I'm glad I had that sense of urgency in the beginning, though, because otherwise I might have, oh, it's not right, or it's not 100%, and I wouldn't have gone when we did.
And well, now that you mentioned this time frame, like how are you dealing now? Are you having these hybrid experiences right now, or are you still keeping the virtual safaris while the other ones are the offline ones are
so
growing in numbers?
When we started, we had a fixed schedule that people could just book a time off the website, and they secured that time and that date, and that's how it worked. Then slowly but surely, we had to start decreasing the number of available times that we had on those calendars, because our guide, in August last year, we reopened some of our lodges to the domestic market. And then that started the juggle between our guides and our guests and our virtual guests. And so we've had to slowly tweak or adjust operationally how we book them. And then for most of this year, it's been on request. So you request a date and we see if we can fulfill that for you. But now it's getting harder and harder to fulfill and to honor requests that are further out. And people want to plan. So we've put it on pause for the moment until we can see how we take it forward. I think there's an opportunity for us to start using it as a sales conversion tool. Yeah. And so we're looking at how we play with it from that perspective as to just the virtual experience that's for sale. But yeah, that's some interesting ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Wait, let me silence. Yeah, sorry, there was a background noise. Okay, I had another question regarding the demographics of your customers. So of course you were providing now these virtual experiences to also the customers you already had who had already booked the safaris, to provide, you know, something that could substitute this. But did you also manage to expand your range of customers and their characteristics?
Yeah, I think we did. You know, as a marketing director in an impact-led travel company, our budgets have always been tiny, tiny, tiny. So we've always had a very, very focused, targeted marketing strategy. I've never been able to go too wide because of the price of our beds. It's a very niche market, sort of at the top end. So that those twice daily live streams put our brand in front of a real cross range of the market in terms of wildlife lovers. It sort of captured, you know, from somebody who might never be able to travel to, you know, to the mega rich at the end of the scale who travels all the time. We got in front of a wide audience and across many different markets. It was streamed into China. It was streamed into the States, into South America. It was really interesting to see. And the numbers over that lockdown, it went into the millions of people that were watching it. So that was quite interesting. But the paid ones tended to stay in our demographic, which is probably mostly the US. Most of our demand came out of the US for the virtual experiences. And then interestingly enough, we had quite a lot of demand from Asia, from Singapore. We had quite a few experiences sold into that market, some into the UK as well, a little bit South America, a little bit the rest of Europe, but predominantly it was the UK and Singapore. And then some said, definitely coming on safari, and we'd love to see you in person. And some people who bought it said, I've always wanted to go on safari. I can't ever afford it. It's been wonderful. And then we've had from children's hospitals that stream it into cancer wards. We've had responses. So that's not the paid stuff. That's the freely available twice daily. We've had many people thank us, people who are elderly and ill, who can't travel because of their condition, just thank us so much so from a goodwill perspective, I think we did the brand did well at a mass reach, and then the private virtual safaris got quite a lot of traction in our demographic, and I think it will be interesting to see how that plays forward in the next couple of months.
Yeah, lovely to hear more about this in the future. If like people are really going to keep a bit of the safaris, as you mentioned before, as a way also to like drive sales, or they're still going to ask just for virtual safaris. Yeah, that would be interesting to know.
Well, just so you know, I mean, the range of requests that we got were quite fascinating. We had a bank in the US that, as part of their corporate social responsibility, runs a program called Grow Up Great, where they invest in schools all the way around the States. Now, with COVID, they weren't able to do anything with those preschools. And so through an events company that had found us for another event, that events company pitched virtual safaris for 3 to 5 year old toddlers in the schools around their in their database. And so they purchased from us 90 virtual safaris in the month of April this year, which were only half an hour each. We developed a program for in a classroom with them, as well as on the screen that the guides ran through. And we sent, the bank sent props like binoculars, and they had like elephants that they could attach, and there was a whole lot of stuff that they could use to make the sessions interactive. And we did 90 of these 30-minute virtual safaris for 3 to 5 year olds. And so, yeah, we did Wild Child. Our children's program in our lodges is called Wild Child. We did Wild Child birthday parties for kids with our guides. So interesting ways of taking the brand through a virtual mechanism to the other side. We developed missions that the children could do on their side. So they would do something and our guides would do something. So we taught them how to plant trees, make bird feeders, make a fire with sticks, although the kids didn't do that, but we taught them how to make bread that they could cook on the fire. We taught them, I'm just trying to think what the other missions were. It's
amazing because you have such a nice product that you can, you can work with any kind of time range, age range, like anything in any sector basically. And it's good that you also use this as a way to educate children in this case, to like have, they're very little, the ones you're talking about, but it's good to really start from their early age and create like a more sustainable tourism in the future.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like we said, if you don't know about something, you will never be able to care for it. So that education and that inspiration is a big part of what we as like a marketing team find as our jobs. We call it edutainment. We want the content produced to do more than just distract at a moment because you're sitting on your phone, that there's some benefit long term to it. And we had fun creating it over the last year.
Amazing, very good. And now, well, I wanted to ask you also to share with us the article you mentioned about that was written last year, that it helped, spread the word about what you're doing. I think it would be nice to see how they describe your business, and also as a way to encourage the entrepreneurs here with us to also look to share interesting stories with the media, because that obviously promotes a lot the business. And now if we go more about the digital marketing topic, like what have you done during this last month in terms of social media, in terms of digital channels to communicate with customers?
Yeah,
I guess there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, there was a lot that we did. I mean, just to come back onto saying to the entrepreneurs, so because we've got a small marketing budget, a really, really small one, we can't afford to pay for above the line advertising. It's too expensive. The rate cards for some of, the placements in traditional media are really, really costly. So we have always had the strategy of getting editorial content rather than advertorial content. And so we do that by inviting media to stay and pitching stories to them that they can come experience for themselves with us. So I guess the way that we spoke to the Wall Street Journal correspondent, they can't accept anything for free. So she bought it herself, but we encouraged a lot of media to try the experience out. A lot of them had experienced the real thing as well. So a lot of them were like, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but we host media trips on a virtual space. And that's important for us because, especially from a digital perspective, they write about the experience. You can't control what they say. You have to trust your experience, or you'll have to trust your product, because you can't control what comes out their mouth. You have to treat them well, look after them, have authenticity, integrity in your brand, and then they must write about it, because that's where the true credibility comes. But those backlinks that come back into your website are invaluable, because they're normally from very credible sites, and so they help your site rank a little bit. And we found that a lot more useful than just paying for advertising. The advertising, if you're trying to get your brand known or recognized at a mass, scale, is probably helpful, but it just costs a lot of money. And so we do that with media, and then we focus a lot on our own organic content, the content that we generate ourselves. And so, like I said to you, in March last year, when we started asking those questions, we also started to realize our guides were in the field, they had phones, and they could generate content for us. And so we, again, let go of perfect, because we normally used to send film crews in if we produced any video. And we started Ambion TV. So we started 3 different series. We started a Protect Our Planet series. We started a Wild Child series of becoming a ranger, with these little 8-minute or 8 to 10-minute videos of guides teaching the kids skills. We had Experiences TV, where we did a range of our different sort of travel experiences. And we had a 4th one. I should be able to remember it. It's just left my mind. We also had Wild Watch, which was our twice daily live streams that I've been talking about. So that came under Ambion TV, and we had a little broadcast schedule as to when they would come out, and they would be distributed through a social media. So our social media started to focus very much around content. We also started a podcast channel, which has been really interesting to see how it's grown over the last, that also launched in May. And we now release a podcast once a week, and we've got some really interesting topics on it. It also was an interesting way to, within our team, we did some research on technology that was available. We interviewed some podcasters to sort of learn some of the tips and tricks, and then we started. In the beginning, our sound quality was probably terrible, but we've definitely improved as we've gone. And now we release a podcast a week, and it's really nice depth of content. When you're launching something, to be able to talk about it or have something for somebody to listen to, it's really, really great. And so, and then we've always had an online magazine, so those stories kept on coming out. And then we always had our bringing Ambion home, our recipes. We did wild child activities. We did a whole lot of different stuff, which was very cool.
Yeah, you have a lot of different techniques to attract customers. Well done. And also congrats for the podcast. I know it's not something that's very easy to do, because you really need to work on the content and find the good speakers, right? And I really want to, I saw it on your website, and I really want to listen to it soon. And in terms of email marketing, so do you use it a lot with your customers?
Yeah, so that was another thing that we did with this content in terms of distribution. So what I said to my team is, let's create a house with some really interesting rooms in it. And I guess we chose these different themes of of family with wild child, Protect Our Planet for the philanthropy and the conservation, people who are interested in that, Travel Inspired, and Wild Watch, the wildlife, because there's a lot of our audience loves wildlife. And so let's create these rooms, and then we invite people to the house, depending via social and our email channels. And then the second story of the house is the paid experiences. So the first story of the house is all free, available content, but the second is paid for, and that was all of our virtual experiences. So I've spoken about the virtual safaris, but we also had our chefs doing cooking classes. We had tango lessons. We had chat to one of our marine conservationists or chat to a conservation manager at one of our reserves. So we did sort of a conservation set of experiences as well. But then we sent out mails. Initially, the first 6 months, it was one a week, and each one was themed. So it was either Protect Our Planet or Wild Child or Travel Inspired or Wild Watch. And then my team nearly fell over because we were all working really hard. And then and also the market, people started to get more busy. And so we now started to stagger it. So email marketing was a very big part of what we did last year, just to keep the brand front and center. And it was really interesting to see the engagement and our open rates on those campaigns. The content wasn't product pushy. We didn't push product. We pushed stories. And that to work really, really well.
That makes a difference. Yeah. This is amazing, Nicole. Thanks so much. I want to give the floor now to all of you who are here. I guess you have a few questions, so you can also unmute yourself and ask it directly if you feel like. While you do that, there's a question from Veronica who is asking, so imagine that and beyond would have been selling experiences, not luxury experiences, but more like on a budget, for budget travels. Would you have done the same techniques, you think, or would you have done it differently?
I think the same techniques could have worked. Let's just say that. I think how you priced them might have differed, but we priced it according to how our real experiences work as well, to keep that brand, to keep the brand integrity intact. But I definitely think that if you were at the budget level, it's just as relevant. Stories, wherever you are, you sort of in the product mix, or on the demographic from very expensive down to budget. The stories are relevant, and creating content that has integrity and authenticity is important all the way through. So I would say yes. I think it could. It would just maybe.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's a matter of connecting with the customers you have, right, and adapting to what they want. So obviously, stories in this kind of businesses are a must. And how you managed to diversify everything you did and connect with any kind of customer has been great. Okay, Agustina is asking, what was the process like when searching for partners worldwide? How did you go through that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think initially we relied on the partnerships that we had long-standing relationships with. And we got a sense that through the storm, you needed to collaborate, like you needed to help, wherever somebody was, if there was something we could do for them or they could do for us, it was a lot easier to have those conversations right now. So we started off with the ones that we had, but we've also found we've broadcast some live panel events, similar to something like this, but we'd have a series of panels on a topic like World Rhino Day last year. We had, it takes a village to save a rhino, and we had a couple of panelists that all spoke about their projects that had a slightly different strategy in terms of protecting rhinos. And that has been that was a great way of building partnerships, because it helped give light to their projects and causes. It helped, we had something in our hand that we had figured out. We had been involved with one or two of them in our own rhino conservation projects ourselves, so that bridge was there. But then they would recommend, well, how about that organization, or how about that organization? And so we've been able to build some new relationships through that. And then also by putting ourselves out there, we had quite a few people come to us, which is also interesting. I think that's one of the benefits of perhaps that mass reach that the live virtual streams got, is that our brand got recognized by a whole lot of different stakeholders, and not just necessarily our target market from a guest perspective. And that was another way. And then I think my lesson during this time, and maybe I call myself a stubborn optimist, so I probably look at the glass always half full, but I love saying yes to a conversation. And so I know sometimes it drives my family and my team mad because I don't have enough time, but I'll see something and I'll go, well, that's worth, talking is free. We can have a conversation and see where it goes. And sometimes it goes somewhere and sometimes it doesn't. But being open to possibility probably is one of the best ways, I would say, to create those partnerships.
That's great. Thanks a lot for this answer. We have another question from Hassan Pulaid, who's asking, how easy can it be to connect and network worldwide to potential clients? Is there any tip? I guess it's in line with what you just mentioned. So yeah, you already gave like a few tips, but maybe a way of approaching them, if you could think about it. If you don't have their email address, what would you do? How would you go?
Yeah, I always try look for somebody who is connected into the organization that could perhaps make a recommendation. It's normally the best way to get the door to open than just a cold call. Or even if I look at sometimes how we get contacted a lot. If I know there's somebody that could vouch for the person that is contacting me, it's normally easier to get me to say yes. I mean, I've already said I say yes to a lot, but I know that we'll try and look at a network of, well, if there's somebody we know who knows us, who could make that introduction, because the doors seem to open a lot easier that way, would be my advice.
Okay, great. Any other question here before we close? Well, I mean, we can leave a couple of minutes until there are more questions. I just wanted to wrap up everything that you have mentioned. I think this is worth rewatching again, because you gave a lot of not generic tips, like very specific ones, and I really like that. Some things that are quite hands-on, so that entrepreneurs can really work on putting that into place. I really liked your message about not waiting for everything to be perfect. That's true, because what is perfection? In the end, when is the right moment? Why waiting for that right moment when it might not happen? So that's good. That also leads to a lot of innovation, and you have managed to do this perfectly. And always ask for feedback of customers, because that is going to help us all the time improve. And encourage the media to experience out and to talk about you and to connect with them in a way that it's a win-win for everyone. And in this way, I have to congratulate you. You have done something that you mentioned at the beginning, that tourism done correctly is a force for good. And in this case, you're having a good environmental, but also social impact, which it's very important, of course. So before closing, let me see if there are more questions.
Christina?
Yeah. Yes, John?
Well, Christina, very well moderated, and Nicole, out of adversity, you've done such creative things, right? Just to say that, can I then take you up on your not saying no, and ask if we can contact you in the future? We're trying to put it in of expertise together for the hospitality industry here in Sydney in order to help an industry in adversity. But so it was just to ask you a few things.
No problem whatsoever, John. Christina can send my email address out with the recording, and then just mention that you are on the session, and we can schedule some time. I mean, we're just about to launch our Vision 2030 sort of goals for the organization. It's our impact strategy and our business strategy are the same thing. So we're about to launch it, and one of the pillars of that strategy is to use our impact model to positively influence others. And so if there's any way I can help the tourism industry or any industry of any kind, for sure.
Super. I did have one question from the beginning. Given the scope of your business and the fact that you're dealing with a high-end part of society, what are the sort of priority of services that are behind the scenes that people don't normally see, that you guys really make sure that you get right? For me as a client of yours, I've got somebody's organized my trip and I'm going to come there and it's looking good and fine, but I could get really messed up if you or your staff miss out on a certain service, haven't picked me up on time. What are the highlights or the positions that the activities that you rate most important from a service point of view?
For us, it comes back to almost that shared value model of care of the people. Because when you invest in your people and your people are looked after, a lot of our staff come from the community surrounding our reserves. So when we look after the community surrounding our reserves, it's their families that are being cared for, and then the investment in training on our staff. We actually just about to launch a formal academy that our staff can get certified by the training that they're having. But this is a people business. We have 2,000 and beyonders that work for us across the globe, and it's all about the people. So you will see when guests write back to us and our guest feedback, they will talk about, they came for the wildlife, but they leave talking about the people. And obviously there's a line of service that you have to meet at our price range. You can't drop below that line. We call it the line of memorability. Everything but below that line is expected. And if you don't deliver that, you're just going to get hammered from a feedback perspective. But we train our guests that this is a non-negotiable. Our staff, this is a non-negotiable. We have to meet all those standards. But how can we go beyond that? We play into our name in a big way as to how can we go beyond the expected and deliver the delight and the surprise. And so there's a lot of investment in training in that regard, so that, if we get on a guest feedback that a guest pickup has been missed or a staff member is late, it's handled immediately, because it's not acceptable at our level. It has to be there. But we focus on both making sure that the systems and processes, tee our staff up for winning to hit that line of memorability, but we train for how they go beyond that. And that's for us the magic sauce that keeps guests coming back. I don't know, did that answer your question?
You did very well, thank you.
That's great. So if we don't have any other question, I just want to launch quickly a poll that we would need from you. It's just 4 very easy questions. So before you go, and Nicole, I just shared here in the chat the links to all your social media and your personal LinkedIn profile. But I will also add all this when uploading the recording later or tomorrow morning on Connect.
Great, thank you so much, Christina.
And yeah, thanks a lot again for this amazing interview. Really, I'm very happy to have discovered your business, And I'm sure we will be in contact for other inspiring stories, for sure.
Yeah, well, if there's any way we could help or mentor or guide, yeah, I guess that's why we get up in the morning. So that would be cool.
Great, thank you. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for attending. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.